they can get a kind of a distance, right? They have a really long spyglass. They really see the troop movements of the enemy, and all they're doing with their signaler flags is just communicating to their generals who are behind them. This is what's in your front, this is what's on your left flank, this is what's on your right flank. So now you can well imagine that because you're with a big old red and white flag on a signal, a tower, the enemy artillery is going to spot you, and now you are going to be shelled. So that's the fun part about being in the signal corps. You know, later as you get into like the 20th century, all the combat correspondence assigned within the Army will fall under the signal department because they are communicating visuals. How's it going today?
But at this time, Petersburg is still solidly in Confederate hands.
It is. General, well, we're in August. In the beginning of that, there was two of the Army's premier engineers defending Richmond and Petersburg. That would be Beauregard in Petersburg and Lee above. And you got the 1-2 class graduates, right? So those two guys held off pretty much the initial assaults at Petersburg at the same time the initial assaults are at Cold Harbor, and then it starts to all meet, right? So General Butler is in the middle, right here at Bermuda 100, and he's putting his troops right in the middle of Petersburg and Richmond, so you have Petersburg being hit, Bermuda 100, Richmond being hit, right? So all that's happening at the same time.
So how far west? How far west is the Confederate Army at this point?
In August of '64, they are just south of what is Petersburg, right? And in August of '64, you're going to have a couple of battles: the Battle of Weldon Railroad and the Battle of what's the other one? It's Aurine Station. And those are the ones that start to pull the lines farther past Petersburg. So, which means by August of 1864, what's going on here in this area is pretty much just stagnant, constant. You know, we see you, we know you're here, we're going to shell you. That's what's going on right here.
Did Richmond fall by this point or no?
No, it's going to hold on until April 3rd, 65. Yeah, so
was there fighting literally around this village?
Yeah, and the way it shook out with the fighting here, because you know, you're basically on a narrow neck of land in a peninsula known as Farrar's Island. So the Confederate forces are across the James River, or they are just past you in Varina that way. So what we know happens here at Dutch Gap is that the Confederate Navy will become responsible for the guys at Dutch Gap. They'll build a very powerful fort called Battery Semmes where the power plant sits today. Controlled and maintained and served by the Confederate Navy. Those Confederate sailors are in front of that fort in little pits with Coehorn mortars, 300 yards in front of this position, shelling this every day. So the garrison that was here often had to get in little boats, go across the river, get out of the boats, bayonet charge into those Coehorn mortar pits. The Confederate sailors, of course, retreat, and they fall back to their big fort Battery Semmes. What happens is, once the Union soldiers get possession of those advanced Confederate pits, the big guns at Battery Semmes shoot at the little pits where the mortars are, which makes the Union soldiers have to retreat again. So it all goes back and forth, back and forth. Later in the season, Confederate troops will come in at the other end of this island, which you guys know is the Dutch Gap Nature Trail. They'll come across down there, and they'll start pushing and inching this way. And eventually the garrison that was here had to drive them out, which they do in a night attack on December 17th, 1865. There's a lot of neat action here, but when you're talking about the initial guys killed here, that's August 13th, 1864. The Confederate Navy, which was at Drury's Bluff and Rocket's Landing, was ordered to come down here and shell Dutch Gap. So now they're shelling it, not with just your field guns. We're talking about James rifles and other heavy guns, including 82-pounder shells that can knock out a dozen men in one explosion. So that comes in here that day, and the guys who were killed from that, we believe, are in our cemetery that's on the backside of the building over there. If you walk on that little trail, you'll see a little white fence, and there's 7 holes where those guys were exhumed after the war. So if you want to check it out, right over there.
Thank you.
But anyway, we're going to probably work on this platform all day and continue with that engineering project. Keep in mind that the engineers in the armies are responsible for about 4 different things. They have to be in advance of the army, because if the army comes to a waterway, there's no bridge. So they have to put in a bridge. And this form is a pontoon usually. That's the engineers. They have to do that. When you get across that bridge and you're now assuming a new position, now the engineers have to get in advance of that to see what the lay of the terrain is. If the terrain is suitable to earthworks, the engineers have to come, mark where those positions are, and when the infantry comes up, they guide them in those diggings, right in those operations. So then they set up that, and then the artillery comes in. Artillery is like, well, we have to elevate based off of this triangular field of fire, and we got to figure out where that position is going to be. The engineers assist in those positions. If the army retreats, the army has to have the engineers follow behind them, because everything that they don't want the enemy to get has to be broken down by the engineers. It's a lot of fun, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, this would be something like, this would be like a thing that a squad of the engineers would be assigned to do. They would basically have a squad by a corporal sent over here, a sergeant 10 men over there.
How many people here?
At Dutch Gap, at its peak in August of '64, there's 1,200 men here.
Oh, wow.
So, and when the engineers that are here, they send 120 men the first time. They maxed out at 200 engineers here, and then they cut back as everything started to get finished. One of the things that they built here, as you can still see, is just over there past the picnic table, you'll see a little rise of the dirt. That is one of the surviving 8-inch mortar positions that they would have put in here in the summer of 1864. And what's cool that we have is, the engineers were all over this place, so they mapped it heavily. And you can lay that modern map on top of the current map, and you can line up where everything was. The modern canal cut off a bunch of the fortifications, but one of those 8-inch mortars sat right past that stone marker and that big old oak tree. You can see it comes up out of the ground, right? And you'll notice it's sunken down a little bit, and it comes up to that berm. And mortar positions were angled down like this, so the mortar is basically doing that in its trajectory, right? So just a little bit of a rise in the back, and of course you have the hill in front, which is your protective earth. Usually the 1st York Engineers preferred to sandbag everything. So what they would have done is use logs, certainly, to revet things, make a wall, but on top, to keep the guys there pretty safe from sniper fire and other things, they sandbagged everything. You can see that in photographs and whatnot. The guys that we portrayed today, before they came to Virginia, were all, the year before, in Charleston, South Carolina, responsible for all the engineering projects at the Siege of Charleston, which is all sandbagging, right? Because you're all digging around those beaches, there's not a lot of soil to go to. So anyway, my name's John, by the way. If you guys have any questions, just feel free to ask. Our civilians are here today just to tell about the local civilians that got impacted by this conflict.
So what about the water we were talking earlier about how the group that was here actually dug out water, caused the swamp?
Oh, you mean this, so the James River went 7 miles around us right here, right now, right? So when the Dominion Power Plant came in, they of course wanted to
What is it, the musical song? What's going on? Yeah, you never know what you're going to get. Where brother at? Let's see if I can see at least this one through. Oh, you can. Actually, maybe it's not so wise to get television off early in the day either. In place rest. Actually, yeah, that's fine. Chris, it's down this way. It's not empty yet.
in each rank. Count 2.
1, 2.
1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. Shoulder off. With doubling, right face. Front. Order off. In place, rest. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning, sir.
I wanted to thank you all for coming out this weekend. It's nice to have everybody back together, see a couple of the familiar faces, some faces that we haven't seen in a while as well. It's welcome. So we've got a lot going on today. We're going to follow this very similar to what we did at Gettysburg. We're going to be rotating guard mount. We're going to have some drill thrown in there. The rest is camp life as we know it. And we've got 2 firing demos today. One at 1 o'clock and one at 3. So if you don't have rounds, figure it out. Now is the time. We will be doing a mail call in a few minutes. We're going to have mail call in a few minutes. We're going to stack arms here, and I've got a couple of quick announcements just for what the rest of the year is going to look like, but that's going to be after you guys fall out. We'll do a full circle and go that way. Okay? Alright, real quick, we have something a little special to do. Issued to the men of the 124th New York on the eve of the Battle of Chancellorsville. They received it before any symbol of corps or division. So those diamonds that you wear on your cap or on your jacket, this predates it. Augustus Van Hornellis, the colonel of the regiment, wrote home at camp at Falmouth, Virginia, asking for this ribbon. He used it as a way to identify his men, but eventually, just like most symbols in the military, it grew to be much more. It became a badge of honor. It became something that these men took pride in, so much so that the regiment still was wearing them when they mustered out of service almost 2.5 to 3 years later. The regiment started with over 1,000. When they made it home, there was a little more than 100. Proudly wearing this orange ribbon. We, as reenactors, take this symbol as seriously as they do. It is an honor that we do not bestow lightly. And so it is a great pleasure to get to tie this off for another soldier in the regiment. Attention company! Private Brown, front and center. For those who do not know, Private Brown came to us at the Battle of the Wilderness. This is his first time out with us. He fit in immediately with the guys. He came out and he proudly earned his ribbon at that fight. 3 cheers for Private Brown. Hip hip! Huzzah! Hip hip! Huzzah! Hip hip! Huzzah! And a tiger. Honestly, it's one of my favorite things to do is to get to do that ceremony. It is my honor to get to do that as your captain. All right. So, I'm going to fix bayonets in just a moment. We're going to stack arms. And then from there, break, take your leathers off. We're going to meet down at where my setup is, and we'll start talking through everything else. Yes. Go ahead.
Alright, we're going to do weapons inspection. Rear rank. Wait, I don't know the command for that.
That's malicious stuff. Rear rank, to the rear, and open order. March.
Johnny, do you want to fall back and take the rear rank? Alright, inspection.
Inspection on. So you throw the bayonet on, and then you pull the hammer.
Amazing.
Thank you. Yep.
So when you present for an inspection, so if you're the inspector, you got an idea, go ahead and grab it below that first name.
You are not going to put yours in the back and schedule. Actually, you can call them up.
Absolutely.
How's he working for you? He's working good for you?
Oh yeah.
Congratulations. With dust on your dumpling. With dust on your eagle. I didn't make this
Revoke.
functionally.
We're running through it.
Yeah.
Eat up.
Alright, so,
Return your rammer.
yeah, return your rammer. Alright,
Actually, probably you can go ahead and fall out of line right now.
yeah, then Matt, you'll...
Flush that thing out with some agua.
Got any squirrel still on that tree? Is the squirrel still on that tree? No. It's got some axle grease. This one's stayed off center. Actually, turns out that Chris's elbow.
Yeah. Yeah. Tennis elbow.
Right on my tip.
Oh, you won't use that.
Oh, yeah.